In this video, we're going to disable the high voltage battery on the Toyota Prius. So I've already entered in the information for the Prius, so we're going to go over here to the service manual, and then we'll come down to electrical. And we're going to go into the high voltage system. So high voltage service disable procedures. So this is where we want to go right here. So we're going to click on that. And first of all, it tells you safety precautions, then special tools, and high voltage disable. I'll go over the special tools and the safety precautions here in a minute, but what we're going to do is we're going to click on this one. And this is a 2005 Prius, so we're going to click on there. So what I want to do is I want to disconnect. So click on that, and it gives me instructions on how to disconnect the high voltage battery pack. The battery pack is actually located in the trunk, and it's going to be underneath this tub, I guess, what you want, rear deck floor box, I guess is what they're calling it. Anyway, it's going to be underneath this, so we have to take this cover off, we have to take this cover off, we have to take that cover off, and go to in order to find it. And then the actual disconnect is right down here on the side of the high voltage battery. Let me pull this back up again. This right here is your high voltage battery. So this portion of it right here. That switch right there is your disconnect. That's your high voltage disconnect. So, and then it walks you through how to disassemble everything. So it shows you how to pull the box out, how to pull the cover off. And then what it does tell you to do is disconnect the 12 volt battery, auxiliary battery, and then you can reach in and you can disconnect the high voltage battery clip right here. So the high voltage battery clip, the way it works is you've got a lever that pulls down. It pulls down about a quarter of the way, about 45 degrees or so, and then you can pull the switch out. Or actually, it's 90 degrees, but anyway, then you can pull the switch out, and it's located right there. So, and then once you get the switch out and the battery is disconnected, what you want to do is you want to make sure that there's no high voltage remaining up above. So that's this next portion right here, which is called the isolation check. And with the isolation check, you're going to remove this cover right here that's on top of the engine. I'm going to show you this cover. I'm not going to actually remove it because these two bolts right back here, those two, are extremely difficult to get to. You have to remove the wiper assembly and all this cowling right up here in order to get to it. And we're not going to actually do any work on this car right now, so we want to keep it drivable. So I'll show you where to go for that, but we're not actually going to get underneath this cover. But once you have that cover off, then what you're going to do is you're going to take your meter and you're going to measure these two ports right here, these two high voltage cables coming in, and you're going to measure these two cables coming in. That's the place where you're going to measure for high voltage. And if your battery is disconnected, you should have 0 volts here. Your meter needs to be on the 400 volt scale in order to do that. But that's where you're at. And you also need to be using a Cat 3 multimeter in order to do this. And that's where you're going to check for terminals for or to making sure that there is no high voltage present before you start working on the vehicle. Once you've verified there's no high voltage present, then you can go ahead and start doing whatever service you need to do on the vehicle. So now let's go out to the vehicle and take a look out there. For part of your PPE that you need for this disconnecting the high voltage on a hybrid electric is you need some electrical insulation gloves. And then they also come with these leather protector gloves that go over the top of these. Now these gloves are rated for a certain amount of time. But anyway, there's a date right here on the glove, and this date here is 2009. These gloves are good for 5 years after you open the package. And so you open up the package, you got 5 years. These were opened up about 4.5 years ago, but the problem is they're starting to degrade a little bit here. So these are not really that safe to use. I'm going to disconnect the high voltage battery pack at my own risk on the car today, just so that you can see how it's done. But they come in a package like this that is sealed, and you have to break the seal. It's got a date on it, and then you can write the date that you broke it open, and then it starts from 5 years from that date there. So the way you test these gloves is you lay them out on a table like this, and then you're going to roll them up. And so you just roll this up, and they should balloon up just like that right there, and there should be no leaks. So you can see how I've got it rolled up and they're not leaking. So that, in that aspect, they're in good shape. So we'll do the same thing to this glove and make sure that it's not leaking. So just blow them up, and they shouldn't leak. And then when you put them on, what you're going to do is you're just going to slide your hand in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put the leather glove over the top of it, which is kind of tricky because the leather glove is a little bit smaller than these rubber ones. But there you go. So this leather glove is only there to protect the rubber from being damaged. And so with these gloves on, I'm ready to go and disconnect the high voltage battery pack on the car. So we'll go out there and do that, and then we'll come back. So this is the interior that we have to disassemble in order to gain access to the high voltage battery pack. The battery pack is actually going to be underneath this right here. So we're going to have to take this out, take this out, take this out over here, and disconnect the auxiliary battery. The auxiliary battery is actually located over here, and then we can gain access to the high voltage battery. Okay, so I've got the cover out. I just set the cover up here just so it's out of the way. Now we're going to lift the box out, and it comes out pretty easily. It just lifts out of the car like this, and we're going to set that off to the side. And then over here you've got a cover that just lifts off once you get the box out, and we're going to disconnect the battery over here, the 12 volt. This is a 12 volt auxiliary battery. We're going to disconnect that. And then once we've got that disconnected, our switch is right over here on the high voltage battery pack. So we'll go to that point. So this is where the switch is right here. And what we've got to do is we've got to lift that lever up and then pull it out. So I'll try and demonstrate this so that you can kind of see what's going on. I don't know how much of it you'll actually be able to see on camera, but you lift that up like that, and then you move this out so that you can see the switch is sticking out like that. And then it's just a matter of pulling it out of the battery pack. So this is the switch right here, and that's all it is. So the way the switch works is when it's plugged in, you lift up on it like this, and then you pull it down like that, and then it comes out of the battery pack. And then when you put it back in, you slide it in this way, lift it up, push it down, and that locks it into place. This is the cover that you're going to take off in order to check to make sure that there is no more power available at the high voltage level. So you take all these screws off here, and if you look back up in here, there's a couple more screws that are back up in here, so you have to take all this off too. And then once you get this cover off, there's a point here and a point down here where you're going to, with a voltmeter, check to see if you've got high voltage. And once you've done that and you verified that there's no more voltage there, you're good to go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back in the reverse order and put everything back the way it was. So we'll open up the switch. We'll slide the switch back in here. So here's the plug after I've got it plugged in. It's all good to go. So now just put the trim back together and we're all done. So we are complete with this job now. The trim's back in place. The batteries are hooked up. I've gone up here and checked to make sure that the car starts. And so everything is back to the way it should be. So we'll see you in the next video.